Martha and Mary were the perfect combination for hospitality, if only they could get along. Martha got the food ready, and Mary sat and listened to their guest. Is that not what makes a guest comfortable? To have one's desire for conversation, food, and drink taken care of? They were perfect. In this case, the guest was Jesus Christ, who has been invited into the home of Martha and Mary. It is a great thing to invite the Lord into one's home. Abraham and Sarah invited into their home 3 men in the first reading, interpreted as representing the Trinity in Rublev's famous icon called the Trinity. The couple's hospitality was rewarded with the prediction of the birth of a child to a couple that was way past childbearing age. Not recorded in today's reading is Sarah's laugh when she overheard the prediction. Abraham and Sarah had given up having the hope of having children, but with God all things are possible, and a son was born to them, and her laugh is reflected in his name, Isaac. It is a wonderful thing to invite the Lord into our lives, as did Martha and Mary, Abraham and Sarah. That invitation changes lives. Whether the Lord comes as a guest in the Scriptures, in sacrament, in prayer, in one another. It is especially true in marriage. As one of the 7 sacraments, marriage is a sacrament. It is sacred, privileged, a privileged way by which Christ enters into our lives. The union of a baptized husband and a baptized wife is a sacrament of the union of Christ and his bride, the church. It's a sign. Christian marriage signifies and really communicates grace, and thus it is entered into with great reverence for both the sacrament and one's spouse. Together they form the cradle of security, the security which the children feel is based in the strength of the marriage bond of the children's parents. That is important for us to remember. So why should the church be invited into marriage? As some people say, what is the church? The church has no business being in the bedroom. But because this is, for most people, the way they go to God, because most people get married, it is, and because for those who get married, the most significant relationship, the most significant human relationship you will have in your life is that you have with your spouse. It is important. If that relationship is good, you will be fairly happy. If it's not good, if it is bad, your life could be very sad. And it is the job of the church to articulate the high ideal of what a marriage can be at its best, both for the sake of the couple and for the sake of the children. The church is the caretaker of a vision of marriage which it holds, and it's a very high ideal to be striven for. But those who reach it know marital bliss as few people do. That's what the church is doing, because marriage is intricately bound with walking to God, and it is the church's job to help people walk to God. In fact, in Christian marriage, the couple is not primarily inviting the Lord into their relationship, But first and foremost, they are accepting the Lord's invitation to live their relationship in the Lord. In particular, to take their relationship into the bond of the Trinity, the love of the Trinity. Marriage is a life which defines the way by which the couple will walk together towards union with God. And that is all our destinies. We were made to be in union with God. So, a little advice to the younger people: when you choose a spouse, choose someone that you can walk to God with, a partner. It may be the most important criteria for you to use when you choose a spouse. The love of God, which is made flesh in Christ, now enters into the marriage bond of the Christian couple. In that context, conjugal relations is the sign of the total self-gift of husband to wife and the total self-gift of wife to husband. It is the sign, it is not the reality, it is the sign of a total self-gift. It is a sign so sacred that it is set aside as proper only to those who are married. It is an essential sign of marriage. It is so important. Conjugal relations celebrate the joys and sufferings and sacrifices which the spouses have experienced, and at the same time it looks forward and inspires even greater joys, sufferings, and sacrifices in the future. It celebrates the past and it looks forward to the future. The marital embrace is a sign of complete acceptance of one's spouse as he or she is. Let me repeat that. The marital embrace is a sign of complete acceptance of one's spouse as he or she is. Not as you want them to be, but as they are. This is one area where our current American culture parts ways with God's vision of marriage, because to alter a significant dimension of oneself in order to enter into this love embrace is a contradiction. It violates the integrity and meaning of the act itself. Now, what the heck does that mean? Let me try to explain. For much of the American culture, marital or conjugal act is viewed more as recreation much of the time, except those occasions when a couple may actually try to have a child. In fact, it is no longer seen as something specifically marital or conjugal at all. This can be destructive, especially to our young people and children. Secular society views these relations ideally as something done by disease-free, consenting adults, maybe not even adults, with marriage as an optional and incidental precondition, not that important, and conception as a rare and preventable consequence. Most of the time, one partner, people do say, don't they know how this happens if you see a couple with a lot of kids? It's sort of a sarcastic assumption that no one would want to have a lot of kids. Bad assumption. Most of the time, one partner or the other will alter himself or herself by eliminating the possibility of conception from the marital act through the use of drugs or devices, a pill, an implant, a condom, an IUD, sterilization, or some other contraceptive by which one's fertility is compromised or eliminated. But this is a contradiction to the essential message of the conjugal act. The conjugal act says, I love you totally as you are, while contraceptive act says, I love you except for your fertility. Now, how important a part of you is your fertility? I think it's incredibly important. The church thinks it's incredibly important. Contraception and sterilization are wrong precisely because They compromise the essential sign of love in marriage. And instead of saying, I love you totally as you are, it says, change an essential part of yourself and I will love you. It looks more like love with reservations than the unconditional love that the marriage bond requires. So, what if a Catholic couple decides, for some serious reason, not to have children? Or not to have a child right now, for example? Are they just supposed to abstain from lovemaking? This is where the methods of natural family planning, called NFP, referred to as NFP, enter in. In fact, that's why I'm talking about this today. This is the first day of NFP week. And so that's the reason we're treating this topic. Though NFP is much more, it can serve as an effective, scientifically proven, natural, and moral way of avoiding pregnancy without either husband or wife having to alter himself or herself. It allows you to accept one another as you are. Nor does it, you avoid having children without the risk of side effects of contraceptives or to compromise one's integrity or the marriage commitment itself, that is, the marriage covenant. The integrity of each person and of the marriage are respected, not altered. Thus, the essential message of the act, I love you totally as you are, remains intact. The main downside is that one has to develop the self-mastery to avoid lovemaking during fertile periods. Scientifically, it's easy to pinpoint them. Discipline, self-mastery-wise, that has to be developed. But this downside is experienced as a plus if and when the couple learns to express their love in different ways during those times. It broadens the base of the relationship. This is what couples who practice NFP tell us. And if a couple wants another child, they can target fertile times and more effectively conceive. The key from that in all this, they are respecting, not changing, their basic biology. They are working with who they are, not changing who they are. So, the two methods are basically different because the culture wants us to be in control of our bodies and so that we can do whatever we want. The Catholic culture sees sexuality as a powerful gift from God with limitations, and we experience it in the context of God's Trinitarian love. Our culture says change your bodies so that you can have sexual pleasure whenever you want and use some barrier, a drug or something, despite the risky side effects. Pay no attention to the fine print. Alter your biology so that you can temporarily enjoy one another or the part of each other that you want to enjoy. Contraceptive actions put the emphasis on partial embrace, not a total embrace. Whereas the Catholic view sees respect as the hallmark, even reverence for one's spouse, for marriage, for the conjugal act. Pleasure is there and must be dealt with, and it's a good thing, but it is not the main thing. It is subordinated to the good of the persons, the marriage, the ends of marriage, to God's plan. Accept one another totally as you are, not as you wish he or she were. Theology, the body, calls this total self-gift, and conjugal love is an essential sign of that gift. It is the context in which all other gifts are given. The personalistic norm applies here. A person may never be used. Only think so. It is wrong to manipulate a person. We do it all the time, politically, sexually, economically, but it is wrong. And we need to work on that, and it is a sign that we are fallen. The question is, do we respect the personhood of one another, or do we not? Do we manipulate? And finally, we trust in God that by respecting one another, we can walk to God more faithfully and fruitfully. Back to the gospel, could Martha and Mary, or for that matter, Abraham and Sarah, could they have possibly known what they were doing when they invited the Lord into their lives? Could they have had any idea of the profound and beautiful consequences of this simple act of hospitality? Today, can the man and woman who undertake marriage in the Catholic Church possibly understand how transformative God's love is? Can they understand how the love of God enters into their lives in the words of the second reading as part of the mystery hidden from generations past? Indeed, this is grace. Husband and wife are eligible to become part of the holy ones who are being perfected in Christ. It is the fulfillment of the deepest spousal joy to walk together towards union with their loving God.